Hi, and welcome to the Painting with Commentary video for episode 36 of Paint to Life, Octavia the Peacebringer. Now this particular model was a Reaper Bones Kickstarter 4. It was model number 13. I believe it might be called a Chaos Warrior, but I haven't seen it for sale. So I started this model because I had the Kickstarter. I really like the sculpt. It looks super badass and the shield comes off. So I started with a Chaos Black and a white Zenithal Prime. And the purpose for that in this particular model was just to highlight a lot of those details that otherwise might get lost with a flat prime. So the nice thing, as I mentioned, is the shield detaches from the model's arm. You glue it on, so it's very easy to paint the shield and the model and then reattach them when you're finished. This shield is probably one of the cooler shields I've ever seen. Looks like a nice orc just pressed up against that. Those teeth could be jagged dagger kind of things. So I'm starting with a lead Belcher coat, and I wanted to do a golden kind of orc face with gold and green as the palette for this. So I used the Sigmarite. It's a dry brushing effect. That dry brushing, that paint from Games Workshop is very light gold. It's not a deep gold like the Golden Griffin that they have. So it gives it a more transparent kind of gold. Back to lead Belcher for kind of these steel rivets and kind of the edging around the gold face. Again, I wanted like the lift, the face jutting forward out of this shield to be gold, whereas the shield itself was silver. So as you can see, if I keep the camera steady, yes. So that's dried, and now I'm going to apply some Nuln Oil. Truthfully, this was actually a gloss Nuln Oil because I thought it would look cool if it was like glossy. It wasn't. I had buyer's remorse, so what I ended up doing once it dried and I saw it was gloss, I had to use my Storm Shield Ard Coat. It's a Games Workshop technical paint. It's like a matte finish you can brush on, so I ended up brushing that on top of this Nuln Oil to cut the gloss, because it was just too much. It looked too wet and wasn't what I wanted. But once the matte finish dried, it looked just like regular Nuln Oil, and all was well in the world. So now we have our eyes. So Warpstone Glow, I really like these greens. I wanted the eyes to be kind of like demonic looking, orky like. And then I used Stormhost Silver on the teeth, just to make them really shiny and reflective. And I'm going to touch those pupils again. I'm not sure if I listed the color. I used a level up of a green. You can also see on the pupils on that green, I've touched my Sigmarite a little bit, so I'll have to touch that up again. Remember, if you're painting with these paints, the acrylic paints dry so quickly. If you make a little boo-boo, that's okay. See, I'm hitting those teeth again now on just the top side with a little bit more Stormhill Silver, so they'll be shiny on the tops. And I'm hitting all the little rivets with a little dot as well. So now I'm on to the mini itself. I'm going to lead Belcher the horns of his helmet. This is filmed actually out of order. I painted the lead Belcher on the shield and then moved to the mini to do the lead Belcher. If you're going to try and save some time, whatever color you're painting, as long as you're painting from the inside out, you should do it at the same time. So I just finished the shield at the very beginning of this video, and now I'm painting the exposed armor of this particular dude with lead Belcher as well. That's just a little bonus tip. This model was pretty easy to paint, and I liked the gold that I used, and I also used some yellow, which we're going to get to. When everything was said and done, it was really hard to tell the difference out, especially on camera. There's a very subtle difference between the strappings, which were all like a yellow leather, and then the gold. When you look at the finished pictures, you might look and say, oh, that's just all gold. It's really not, and in person you can really tell, but on camera it was a little bit more subtle. So I also like the cloak. Being a Reaper Bones mini, it's made of PVC plastic. The details are not the greatest, but I thought this one had quite a few details for a Reaper Bones. So now we're going to hit the Liberator Gold to do the helmet. Another thing is, you'll see me, I end up painting those horns also gold, so the whole helmet is gold, and it was pretty cool looking, but I needed a little bit of break, so I painted them silver again later in the video. So I've decided that all of the plate on this armor will be gold, and all of the chain will be lead Belcher, so you can see those plates dropping down from the skull. There's also some holy symbols draped there, some chains, straps. Excuse me. There's a satchel in there. All kinds of fun stuff that a character in Dungeons and Dragons would wear. And if you've seen the episode, you know that there's actually a woman in there, Octavia Netheridge, the Princess of the Vast, leader of the orcs. Okay, look at those tweezers. So I found a little brush hair or something in there. I just used the tweezers to pull it out. Fun little tip there. So that Citadel paint mini holder I have, I don't use it all the time. I know you've seen me use other things. You might use a wine cork with some sticky tack. To each their own. That thing was relatively inexpensive, and this is a mini that I can actually use it on. Steel Legion Drab, this is one of the browns that I'm using. Again, this paint job only has a few colors. This is going to be for the boots. And you know, by thinning my paint, one thing also that I did was I used the very light water. I thinned the paint quite a bit so that the Zenithal might shine through a little bit because it's transparent. Deathworld Forest Green Cloak is one of the two colors I used. You can kind of see when that dries. If it does dry a little opaque, then you should be able to see a little bit of that Zenithal priming underneath, or so other YouTubers will say. Some of the people that I watch say you can actually see through the colors. Games Workshop paints are pretty thick. I guess it depends on the color and the pigment level. I know contrast paints are a little more see-through, but I didn't use many. These are all base colors from their line. So again, most importantly, that Zenithal helps me spot all the little pieces I need to paint while I'm painting. So there's that cloak, Deathworld Green. I liked it, and then I ruin it later. This was a fun mini to just play around with. So what are we on to? Zemesi Desert. Again, see how that's like a yellow paint versus the gold on the helmet? It's pretty... You know, I also realized it could also be my monitor. That doesn't show it very well. Maybe your video looks more distinguished. To me, it looks pretty close, especially when I get the contrast on there later. It's going to really make it look all the same. But all the leather belts and straps, I wanted to be yellow, and the gold would be gold, and so on and so forth. What else did I want to tell you guys about? Yeah, that's cool. I like the little detail on the sword, that like cloth band around the blade near the base. Something that you could grab with your other hand and you know, two-hand that sword, almost like I don't know, maybe that's not what it's for, but that's what I imagine. She could hold it in two hands and like make a thrusting motion or a stomping motion with it. So it's time to dry brush the rock. I just dry brushed on top of the Zenithal with Dawnstone because it's going to be rocks. There are some chains down there as well. And unlike some of my other bases where I go crazy with XPS foam, when you paint these small miniatures, which this one is, it's not very big, it's 28 millimeters, a little higher because of the rock. You know, you can't go too crazy. Apothecary White, this is a contrast paint I'm using on the fur that she wears. This one is a little translucent, so putting it on top of the Zenithal, it was perfect. It dried with just enough contrast between the white, the gray, and then the black showing through. I was very happy with it. And Agarose Dunes, you guys know if you watch my channel a lot, I love this color. I love it on gold, I love it on leather, I love it. It's just a nice yellow brown. And see, I'm pushing it on there and really, and I'm putting on the straps too, which is probably why the colors look the same. And the helmet, very nice. Push, and I take a lot of time to make sure there's not too many pools. You know, you want the little pool of brown, but if it's a little too much, you just touch off your brush on a paper towel to dry it out, and then touch the pool. It'll just soak right up into the brush, because you don't want a big black triangle at the bottom of the armor where all that shit pooled. So again, dry and there, see, I'm painting my horns now with the Agarose Dunes because I was so excited. Agarose Dunes! Paint it all! Paint the cape too, Mike! I actually did paint the cape. I don't know if you heard me whisper, I said I actually did paint the cape. We'll get to that. Golem and Flesh. It's not a typical brown, but on top of that boot, it's great. So now here's what I did to the cape, because we already know I did the Death World Forest. So this, dang, I missed what colors were. Militarium green. Okay, so what did I do there? I diluted it with contrast medium. Okay, so it's like 1 part paint to 2 parts medium, so it goes on really translucent and lets that Death World forest shine through. So now this is just some Nuln Oil just to darken the chains on this guy's outfit, which I've done Stormhold Silver. I must have done them off camera. You can see them all lit up. The Nuln Oil just brings them back to the black. But you can see the cape when I flip it around now that diluted contrast is dried. It's quite nice. Okay, let's hit that cape. Even though I had already done it with the Apothecary White, I'm going to just dry brush on some Praxity White as well. Okay, now see that cloak? There's my contrast. It's been diluted. I like it. And then I ruin it right here. It was a little too muted for me, so I grabbed another contrast called Warp Lightning, which is for like Necrons and Warhammer, and I put it on and basically ruined all my previous work. If you think. I mean, what do you think? It's certainly green. More green than the muted Death World forest that was there before. And funnily enough, I'm not sure if I filmed it, but before that dries, I use a little bit of Agarose Dunes as well on the cape to bring some yellow back into that super high contrast Warp Fiend green. Alright, now we're using some of this technical paint, the Agarose, what's this stuff called? Astrogranite. Use a garbage brush. Lump it on underneath. See, I've glued him to his plastic base, and there's some areas under the rock where the black is exposed. I just want to make it all look the same, so I use this to do that. Okay, now I'm going to use some, since we already dry brushed it gray and the Astrogranite is gray, I'm using Sylvaneth bark to make the rock look a little bit more naturey. So rocks are not all just gray, there's some green in them and brown in them. So by just dry brushing on a little bit of brown, and then I'm going to get a little bit of green, see? It just makes it look like more of an organic rock, and this is Niblet green, dry brush. And then when I saw all that, you can see the chain that's on there has been also painted with a Stormhost Silver. And see the back of the cape is drying, there's a little bit of yellow in it too from the Agarose Dunes. Okay, so now what am I doing? Dat moss dough, nice. These are little chunks of moss, and I'm using super glue. And this was a little tedious. There's a lot of film here for it. But I'm basically, there's so many cracks in that rock. You see all those little like channels and rivets. So I'm taking my snips and I'm cutting these little pieces of moss in little runs. And then I'm super gluing them inside the crack to make it look like the moss is growing in the crack and coming up. And then I'm using my tweezers to hold it down. Moss doesn't glue very well with super glue, but it will. I think less is more, folks. My advice to you, if you're going to try using some of this dried moss you can get from craft stores, see how nice it looks, like I just did there when I was putting a little teeny line. If you put a giant clump of it all at once, yeah, you'll be done soon. And I mean, look how long this is running for. This is 5 times speed. I probably spent 30 minutes gluing all that shit on there and just going ahead with it. But if you do it, you take your time, you're going to be much more pleased with the results, because you put these little teeny pieces on that you're cutting up. And you can control them better and really put them where you want them to be. Also, you can see his helmet, his horns are gold, just like his helmet. Now that all the dunes, Agarose Dunes is on there and dried, I've glued his shield arm on. The moss has different colors, so I'm putting some greener moss at the top and the browner moss at the bottom. And there you go. That's how I based this guy. Nothing too crazy. When it's a single figure like this for D&D, either as a villain or a PC even, you just want the base to look memorable. And always remember, paint around the bottom of your base with nice black so that it stands out. Let's take a look at the finished model. So we can see here his finished shield with the nice glowing eyes, that Sigmarite in his helmet. I painted them silver again on his horns. Another angle, the different colors of the moss, the chain that's on the base, the Agarose Dunes on those brown boots, as well as on his chest armor, her chest armor, sorry about that. We can see the cape looks good. There's the cape on the back, the 3 different colors, included the watered down Militarium green with the Death World green, and then the Agarose Dunes when it was wet mixed to give a little yellow tint to it. I like it a lot. Silver horns again on his head. Here's another angle, nice moss work there. The jangles, a little bit of gold and yellow. Let's zoom in on that yellow right here. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the gold and the leather, but it's there. And there's his little satchel and his little straps with silver, and his chainmail with the Nuln Oil. Her chainmail. God, jeez, whatever. So there you go. That's Octavia the Peacebringer. I hope you enjoyed this little review. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for being a viewer of Paint to Life. I'm GMA Tank. Watch your hands, people.